Okay. Okay. We. In case you miss the tell me, so because if you miss, everybody will miss. Okay. So I think we are ready to start with just a few minutes delay. So I welcome you in the Global Lecture Hall to the second lecture of this year edition. This year, so today we will have a guest lecture from actually the founder of the guest lecture of this ShanghAI lecture, Rolf Pfeiffer, as you all know, is a renowned Sensei Pfeiffer, who is a renowned. I think one of the people who have more, at least from the clarification of a paradigm, have given a bigger contribution to Embodied AI, and is the founder of this series of lectures. And today he will give a very interesting lecture on, I would say, robotics hype and soft robotics. I think it will be very interesting. So today, now I will start and I will continue until about 10 o'clock with the second lecture of a basic thread. So where we actually elaborate the ground ideas on this. For those of you who were attending the past lecture, these lectures are about embodied intelligence. Because you may have been reading a lot of reports in the media about intelligence, even the risk for our society posed by intelligence. Some maybe very far-reaching worry about superintelligence taking over the power from humans, or more realistic, but still maybe a bit in advance of the times, worries about the impact on the job market. So are AI and robots going to take all the jobs? This is something that one day may happen, but that now might be a bit premature as a worry. I would say that if we, when we will be ready to do that, we will probably have more opportunities than risks, but we will have to take some decisions about how we want to exploit the potential of robotics and AI. What we have seen last time is that there is not a shared definition of intelligence. So there are very few, there are many different definitions and very little agreement of what we should consider intelligence. No? So just to super short recap. So it could be the ability to carry on abstract thinking. Maybe it's more sounds better now that we know that from some 20 years, chess, AI are better than humans at playing chess. The ability to adapt oneself adequately to relatively new situations in life, the capacity to learn or to profit by experience, the capacity to acquire capacity. And then we saw this thing, right? So the fact that while I know that chess, AI chess players are usually better than humans, even well-trained humans, what it is unlikely to happen is that a chess player program invent a different way to play chess, for instance, using the chess pieces as darts. So this is typically is so far typically human. What I would like to say is that in principle, everything that we do could be done by a system, by a properly engineered system. What we don't know at the moment is exactly which kind of principle should inspire this kind of system. And then we also know that we are not there for different reasons. One could be a matter of still a problem of computing power. The other, and this is what we are trying to elucidate in this series of lectures, could be that the principle of organizations of natural intelligence are still different from the principle of organization, so from the design of current paradigm robots, which mean mechatronic systems, so pieces of steel or plastic or whatever connected in rigid chains, for people familiar with this concept. No? So chains of rigid bodies controlled by a typical linear, but also not linear control. And then with some learning mechanism to fine-tune the parameters of a control. This is more or less the approach of most advanced systems that we have today. I don't know if any of you prepared a presentation on this, as we raised a challenge last time. Probably no. And so the idea is, if you allow me to go back for a while, no? So the problem of defining intelligence could be an ill-posed problem. Might be much more, because, as told, if you think to robots or to the chess player program or to any of the small games that you can find on a smartphone, for example. And then you think at how typically not only humans but ants or any animals behave, you are puzzled, so you don't know exactly how to define intelligence. Probably the best way to pose the problem is not looking for an abstract and difficult to define a concept like that of intelligence, but having an empirical approach to say, given a behavior of interest, how it comes about. No? So trying to have an engineering approach more than a theoretical approach. Interesting. What is interesting is that about we are now have more than 50 years of research. At this point, I would say we are going in the 60s years of researching both AI and robotics. At the very beginning, probably some of the issues were understood by people like Turing, for example. Actually, Turing was not looking for a definition, was looking for a practical test. No? And this is no, essentially the test is framing a way that there is an interrogator, and they are that can talk by remotely, can chat, so they can write messages and receive messages from two systems. One is supposed to be is a human, and the other is a person. So the idea of a test is that if they distinguish between the human and the person, and the means that the program is intelligent. Of course, I think you may, someone want to object to Turing on this. So if you see some flaw in these things, no? Because the idea is I cannot define any kind of intelligence. I don't know. I am in the 40s. I would say that in the 10 of the 21st century we are in a similar condition. But I am in the 40s. I think because Turing thought that they were very close to build an artificial intelligence. So, but how I can recognize if a system is intelligent? I use the only intelligent system that I know, and I try to see if he is able or not. Then I put a screen in between the system and the interrogator, because I don't want that the interrogator is misguided by the appearance, no? Because if I have a computer and a person, it's very easy to understand which one is the person. But if I don't see who is talking with me, I can be confused. And so when this happens, means that the system is intelligent. Does any of you have an objection on that? You may also know that a couple of years ago, there is a Loebner Prize, which is a prize which is promised to the first system able to pass the Turing test. Yes? Yes?
I object.
You object? Yes?
You said if anyone wants to object. Yes, I object.
Okay, yeah, of course you can object.
Because this test only applies to humans. It's based on language. So according to this measure of intelligence, animals would not be intelligent. I think that's not a valid statement.
This is so. Any comment on Rolf's comment? Because it's clear that the situation, the thing is still controversial, no? Because you have so anyone raising comments. So Rolf say this is not a very good idea because a cat will never pass the Turing test. And looks like a cat. So I mean, I have this feeling. Maybe you have too, that a chess player programmer is less intelligent than a cat. I have this feeling. Of course, cats don't play chess. Any idea? Any comment? So what do you think? I want to check if the system. So I put behind the screen, and on the other side I talk to. And so you have an objection? We had a first objection, which was animals will never pass this. Even very smart animals. A very smart dog will never pass this test. Other objections? No objections. So we may have a look at an early objection, no? Because the idea is this one. No? So the first one is Rolf's objection, and it's much stronger than it seems, because if also from a practical standpoint, no, I want to build a robot which is as smart as a cat, because I want to use this robot for housekeeping. I don't need to have a philosophical conversation with an housekeeping robot. But I need a level of that activity. Then there might be other objections, and a typical objection is the Chinese room experiment from Searles. Because the idea is this one. So you are talking by chat with this system which is behind the screen that you don't see, and this system seems to answer to your questions. No, so the question can be how are you, what's your name, what are you doing today, things like that, no? Or more subtle questions. In principle, I could think of creating a list of all possible questions and put a system, an algorithm to generate the answers, or if you want a list of all possible answers. I say an algorithm because this list could be very long. And then I have the example, the Chinese room experiment, which is very, it's typical of someone who don't speak Chinese, right? So an English-speaking person not speaking Chinese. I say, even if I don't talk any Chinese, if I have a lookup table where all the possible questions are listed on one side and all the other possible answers are listed on the other side, even if I am in the room and I can't speak any Chinese, I can answer properly to all the questions without understanding what I'm saying, even if I don't speak any Chinese. So the idea is that, Searle's idea is that, assuming that Rolf's objection is not valid. So, okay, now I want to test language, a kind of intelligence human-like. So an intelligence similar to human intelligence. Well, even if I don't speak a language, I can give the impression that I understand what I'm saying just by using a lookup table. So this seems another strong objection, right? Because the point is more limited than the one on the animal. So an animal could be intelligent. Here is okay. I follow you. I want to check language-based intelligence. So this very specific intelligence of humans and maybe some apes and maybe dolphins to a lower extent or to a different extent. Let's assume that, but the real point is that the system which is interrogated doesn't need in this setting to understand what it is saying. And I think that this is an homework, so to think about the pros and cons of this approach. Because, for instance, I give for granted that this list is not infinite, no? Because I have a list of the questions and the list of the answer. Then I say, okay, I have a rule system which creates the answer starting from the questions. And I am implicitly assuming that I can create such a list, which is not perfectly obvious. Could be an infinite list. So, could be not a real objection. But it would be nice if you could think about these pros and cons, maybe also browsing the literature, because as students, you should know by now that when we think alone in our room or just talking to our friends and neighbors, we can many times we reinvent the wheel. So we something that we think is original has been already thought. But if you browse the literature, then you will also discover that there is still a lot of room for improvement in our knowledge, in particular on these topics of intelligence. Because this is taken from, you can, again, there are examples, like Eliza, the doctor, already in the series. Then there is kind of Turing test performed on the replicant to discover replicants in the now 30 years old Blade Runner movie. And there are there is now a wave of new apps which will be intelligent chatbots. There is an example in Google as an example already. And taking from the news, I touched this point a few minutes ago. A system pretended to pass a very specific Turing test while in the Loebner Prize because a system was confused by a panel of, I think, 5 interrogators, was confused as a 12 years old boy. And this was sold on the media as a system passing the Turing test. Of course, this could be part of the discussion of the Chinese room experiment also, and in general the Turing test. So it might be that people has very low expectation of 12-year-old boys. So I just touched this topic, because but it's kind of implicit in what we have seen, we have said already, because there are this kind of tests, where you have to fill some to find the next picture, and this could be again something that you try at home, and then you tell me your answer. But the question is if this kind of tests, where typically most of you should be better than the average person, is really. So we already answered to this, because when we say that we don't have a unique definition of intelligence, we don't. So what we really test here is a specific kind of behavior, if you want. So the behavior of doing small logical exercise and small geometric exercise. And that's why I say that you are probably all better than the average of the population, because any student of a scientific topic, so this could exclude Moscow, for example, is more used to do this kind of test. So I was probably better. Mine was probably higher just after I finished studying, because I did less meeting and less lectures than it is today, when I spend less time on the computer or fighting with real problems. So, and so if you want, if you have the will to prepare a presentation of this topic, to discuss this, again, limits and also positive sides, because it's true that if I'm looking for, and this is, if you want, relates to the robots and jobs issue, or AI and jobs issue. Because if you want people and this was the case, and it is to a certain extent the case, doing a certain kind of job where this kind of logical skills and geometric skills are important, the IQ could be one of the metrics. But then I discovered that creative physicists like Einstein had an almost slightly above. So it depends from what you expect. If you want another topic for discussion, if I would have to bet which kind of jobs will be at risk, I would say exactly those that require this kind of mechanical intelligence skills, because what is mechanical, so it's repeated and follows rules that I can write down in advance, even if they are 600 or thousands of rules, and I have to browse thousands of data or even millions of data points. this is something that a machine can do very well. Could be much more difficult to come out with some new idea. No? The example of playing darts with the chess pieces it's kind of stupid, but it gives you an idea, because typically you have real advancement when you look at the same problem from a different perspective. There are many examples of that. No? So this is the kind of intelligence that so far is reserved to humans. So, what are the goals of AI then? Of course, AI it's a very diverse field, but if you look to really understanding natural intelligence and to really, if we aim to really develop robots which can be useful to do complex tasks in open-ended environment in a very adaptive way, we probably have to look at what has been in front of us for a lot of time, logical systems. Not to say that we have to copycat no. We need to understand the basis of the principles of organization. Of course, we know that they came from the evolution, natural evolution. Natural evolution is not intelligent design, so it's an extremely cumbersome, random, inefficient way of designing system. But since life has been existing for billions of years on this planet, many of the solutions that we are looking for are already there. Maybe in very confused and difficult to reverse engineer system. But they are. So we need to understand principal organization of intelligence in natural system. We need to abstract those principles, develop system, and then we can build applications. What can be said about these applications is that if you look at them, they are the kind of mechatronic system plus some machine learning that I was quoting before. So if we want so it is not still what I was talking about. What we really are aiming, and could be a task for the next decade and maybe the next couple of decades, is how to study intelligence with a synthetic approach, the so-called synthetic methodology, meaning that, as I told, natural intelligence is there, so we can see cats, spiders, which could be a more appropriate aim for now, and spiders, yeah, but they are extremely cumbersome because they come from, so they are not easy to be reverse engineered. The idea is that when I believe I have been able to abstract a principle, I build an artificial system, a robot, with those characteristics, and I see that it behaves as I expect. As I told before, we are not looking for an abstract definition of intelligence. We are looking into reproduce some behaviors that we think are interesting from the principle, from a scientific and the application standpoint. Then, if and the synthetic modeling approach is important because I can build kind of toy systems where the principle that I believe I have discovered can be tested. So this gives you a different angle of robotics, no? Because robotics is, of course, an important application domain because we think and we are solving a lot of practical problem by robots. But they also provide a tool for scientific investigation as a clean implementation of principle of organization of living beings and natural intelligence system. Now, since I'm, as usual, running out of time, I will close going back as used in the past to Aristotle, because actually the assistant robot is not a very new idea. As a need is not a new need, so people already thought about that. And Aristotle thought already. This is something that was written in the Politics when in a piece of text where Aristotle was trying to justify slavery. And the idea was that if the Weaver shuttles were to weave by themselves, there would not be no need of apprentices or slaves for the laws. What does it mean? It means that, of course, they needed slaves, and we need dirty, dumb, boring jobs because machines cannot govern themselves. So if my car can drive by itself, I don't need to drive. I can watch a movie when I am in the car. Oh, and this is true for many other things. If I'm not able so housekeeping, some people enjoy to do housekeeping, but for most people it is very boring, right? So if I had a system that can do the housekeeping for me, I won't not need to do the housekeeping. And this is, if you want, the promise of robotics. What is interesting for me is that when a colleague, Caterina Pastra, went to check the original test of Aristotle, actually it was very, for a modern perspective, it was very interesting because it seems that the words that Aristotle used in Greek were much more interesting than the English translation, because actually it was implicitly said by the choice of a word. I will provide you with slides. This for example, that which kind of characteristics that a working robot should have, because this pro-wise phenomenon, I have a Greek here, so I hope I pronounced it correctly, means literally perceiving in advance, understanding, learning. So, and we could go further in this. So actually, these characteristics of adaptivity, anticipation, coupling with external environment were already by intuition understood by Aristotle. What, of course, we still have to do is to build systems which are really implementing natural intelligence principles, because we are still striving to uncover that. Evaug, as I told you before, I think that many of the ideas in terms of principle have been already have been understood. What we need to do is is to implement a research program to put them into action. And now I think I can stop here, and I will leave let's say 5 minutes from now, 5 minutes from now, I will leave the room to Rolf, Professor Rolf Pfeiffer, who will elaborate on where we are now with robotics and on why, for instance, because a difference between an animal and a typical robot that you may think of is that many times animals are soft, robots are not. Does this mean suffering? And so it's an hint that we should exploit. Let's see. And so see you in a minute with a today's guest lecture by Ralph 5. Thank you. Yeah. Yes. Okay, I think we can pass directly to. We can leave the questions to.
Can you give me permission to share the slides, Fabio?
I'm confused. If you permetto. Ralph, when you are ready, you can start. Ralph, when you are ready.
Yes, I'm ready. Is the mic on?
Hey.
I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. So I leave the floor to Professor of Ralph, who is an emeritus professor of the University of Zurich. He's now a professor at Osaka University and Shanghai Yaotong. And I don't tell all the good things that I would say about him because he doesn't like to be adulated in public. So, Ralph, the floor is yours.
Okay, Fabio, thanks very much. I'm very happy to be here. I also see my friends at Jiaotong University in Shanghai, where the whole thing started, where we started 8 years ago. And so this is really nice to be back in the Shanghai Lectures video conference. Okay, so can you see the slides? It's okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So I will be talking about the robot hype and with a note on the RoboLounge project. Now, I hope you can actually see the slides. My hypothesis is, and I have to say that this is a slightly modified version of the talk that I gave at the World Robot Conference in October this year, actually 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago, about a robotics hype. And I think Robotics 2016 has a real problem. Now, I'm not talking about industrial robotics. I'm talking about more these service robotics, social robotics that have become very popular recently. And let me just show you this. I think robotics has a big problem. Okay, let me show a video.
How do you imagine the robot in the future?
Can you hear the sound?
To be like in Will's iRobot movie, and then they'll take over the world.
Can you hear the sound on the video?
Human-like, because humans try to create themselves as machines. So that's exactly how I see robots. It should be intelligent, and it can make decisions itself.
It fears me, but I think they will look like us.
I think robots in the future will be very common in everyday life, like you meet them in a bus or something.
Okay, so you see expectations. And now, what is the reality? Expectations versus reality. Expectations are shaped by Hollywood. And now this is the reality. Doesn't believe it anymore. What? Huh? What? Ah. That's from the DARPA challenge. Okay, so there is a definite discrepancy between what you expect, from Hollywood perspective. Can you actually still hear me? We have a local problem with the sound here. Can you still hear me? Yeah. Okay. Well, anyhow, yeah. Okay. So expectations, they are shaped by the movie industry. In the case of robotics, in the case of the internet, it was entirely different because nobody knew about the internet. So we did not have expectations, whereas with robots, people do have expectations. And they have the expectation there. They have perfect functionality, they have personalities, a polished look. But the reality you see on the right, it's actually this toy look with very little functionality. This is from a robot restaurant in Hefei, where we actually were, I think last year. We took these pictures there. And what you can see is basically this toy look, and it seems like garbage cans on wheels, and all they can do is follow a black line on the ground. And humans have to put the dishes onto the tablet, and then they go to the table, and then humans, as you can see in the bottom left, have to pick the dishes from the tablet. So there is very, very little, if any, sensory motor functionality. So that's the reality, and this is also the reason why in China already 2 or 3 robot restaurants have been closed. And I think one of the restaurants got rid of the robots again because they were lacking appropriate sensory motor functionality. They were basically just garbage cans on wheels. Okay, so there is definitely a robot hype, and it actually started with this message in December 2013, Google buys 8 robotics companies in 6 months. Why? So the point is that if Google does something, then there must be something important about it. And since then, well, before that, robotics, even though robots have now been around for more than half a century and have been doing the work for us, you know, we wouldn't have all the nice things like mobile phones, motorbikes, and household appliances, television screens, if it weren't for the robots who have been working for us the last 50 years. But they were not in public awareness because they were behind factory walls. But since then, since December 2013, they have been in the media all over, not only technological media, but also economic media and financial media. And almost every day you read about them. Now, this was in the factories. You know, this is robots in a Toyota, you know, welding robots in a Toyota factory. And I think if you look at this, you know, it's loud, it's dangerous, it's unpleasant to be there. This is an environment where humans actually shouldn't be. And so as long as the robots were just like that behind the factory walls, we weren't aware of it, but an interesting movement started maybe 20 years ago, and that is that robots started leaving the factory halls, and of course the champion of this is Honda Asimo. Now, I just want to point out one thing. Brilliant engineers at Honda have been working for about 30 years to perfect the movements and the walking behavior of Asimo, but look at how it walks. Something's wrong with it. Okay, anyhow, so you can see, so they have been working on this for a very long time. It's a technological masterpiece, but if you see how it walks, it's far from human walking, right? So it does take time. Robotics is a very difficult field, and this is a message that I will repeat later on because it's a very important message also to investors, potential investors. Now, this field, since they have been leaving the factory floor, there is this field of service robotics, and I think there is a huge potential, but we have to be realistic about expectations. Here, for example, you have the bionic limbs. They function well to a certain extent. You have assistive suits. They also function. Now, this is a rewalk suit in the Cybathlon, you know, this competition where assistive technologies are being tested, which just took place like 2 weeks ago in Zurich, in Switzerland. Assistive suits were tested for paraplegic patients, and it's very hard. It's not a thing that you know, can buy and it will work tomorrow. It will take 5 years, maybe it will take 10 years. You have to be careful about the expectations. Now, service robotics, we all know these things. Amazon, in the middle, you have Jibo, you have these robot waiters, you have the vacuum cleaners, and of course, lawnmowers, and here, you know, some people's favorite, the hamburger machine. A hamburger, is it a robot? Well, a robot that can crunch out 300 hamburgers per hour, which I think is a nice thing. And now we have this big field of what's called social robots. And many people work on social interaction, and I think there is a lot of potential in social interaction. Now look at these robots, and here I just put up some of the better known robots, and these are what I'm showing now. These are from the World Robot Conference in Beijing in October 2016. I just went through the exhibition and took pictures of the robots with my phone. Now look at these robots. These are all so-called social robots that have virtually no sensory motor functionality. They can only talk, maybe smile, make a gesture. Many robots can't even do that. And here are some more, and they're all from different companies. And if you look at them, they all look roughly the same. Of course, there are differences, but they all look roughly the same. Here are some more. Same exhibition, all from different companies. They all look roughly the same. Social interaction robots, no or very little sensory motor functionality. Now, just very briefly, again, about the robot hype and about expectations of investors. So this is the Papero robot, which stands something like for partner personal robot or partner-style personal robot or something, which was developed by NEC Corporation in Japan in 1997, so almost 20 years ago. This is the Papero robot, and if you look at the robots around Papero here, they all look a bit like Papero. So I think Papero was the pioneer and has been copied, with variations, of course, many, many, many times. Now, interestingly, Papero was never a commercial success. And what they did then in 2015, so almost 20 years after they developed the first version in 1997, this is 2015, they added this thing here, which is a Papero that is smaller than the other one and has no movement capability. So it's a static. So they did this to make it cheaper, much cheaper, and to make it suitable for the mass market. Because Papero, I think, was still a bit too expensive for the mass market. So what you can see here is that a world-class company like NEC has been struggling for 20 years, almost 20 years, to find a proper business model for their social robot, so to speak, and they still haven't found it. They're still struggling to find one. So we cannot expect to have very fast return on investment with these things. Now, take the Pepper robot. Everybody knows the Pepper robot. You can see the video there in the center. Now, if you interact with the Pepper robot can tell you about the latest features of Nespresso machines. This is in a Nescafe, in the cafe Nescafe in Harajuku in Tokyo. The girls, they are playing with it. It can tell you about the latest features of Nespresso machines, but it cannot make coffee for you. It has virtually no sensory motor capabilities. That we have to be aware of. And maybe it's a misunderstanding of the notion of social interaction that many people in robotics have. They say we don't need sensory motor. Why do they want to build robots that have no sensory motor capabilities? Because the minute you add sensory motor capabilities, costs skyrocket. And then the robots are no longer suited for the mass market. Then, $20,000 at least. I mean, Pepper initially was marketed for $1,900, and a year later we could get a quote. Of course, I asked for a quote. It's $19,000, so it's now tenfold, but it still doesn't have significant. I mean, it can wave a little, it can shake hands, but it doesn't have significant sensory motor capabilities. And if you interact with it, the novelty of interacting with it wears off very, very quickly. So, and I think it's a misunderstanding of social interaction which underlies this entire business of social robots. If you watch a mother interacting with her child, with a baby, it's a rare case that they will just talk to each other, sit there and talk to each other and maybe smile and wave at each other. So there is a physical interaction. They do something together. They touch each other and play things and move objects and I don't know what. So, and that's the real nature of social interaction. So social interaction is also providing a service. It's really physical interaction, not only talking and making pretty faces. I think that's something we really need to understand. And that's why people get very quickly frustrated with the functionality of these kinds of robots. Now, here's another one. I mean, This is Singapore. I found this.
Hello, everyone. I am Xian. I am a social robot. My main job is to coach people to do exercise. Good job. Place both arms in front of your chest.
Now, I'm not going to ask who thinks this is really the future of robotics. I think this must be a joke. I don't think anyone can take this seriously. But some people do, think this is the future of robotics, right? Okay, now we have this area, huge area of service robotics. But we have to be careful. There is a robotic hype. But the mega trend remains that robots have begun to move into our own living space. Investments, if you look at investments in robotics, now this is not only social robots or service robots, this is robotics overall, but look at the numbers. There is a 170% increase from 2014 to 2015. Don't have the numbers from 2015 to 2016 yet. 170%, that's more than double the investment, more than double. Which is absolutely crazy for any field. So there is a hype. So investors believe in robotics. Now, what if this all was in danger? And it could be that this is in danger. Did we miss something important? It could really be. I think we have, as scientists, as engineers, as teachers, but also as entrepreneurs, we have a responsibility. If we look at the technology of the field of robotics, I think it's in great shape. It's really, the achievements are just enormous. And a hype is not necessarily a bad thing, because it can lead to a topic being well known and to promoting a particular topic. But we have underestimated the emotionality of the topic. If you recall the interview at the beginning of the lecture with these people, the way they see these robots, the robots in the future, it's a high emotionality. And now the backfire from this hype is already starting. Google trying to get, actually for quite some time, they are trying to get rid of their robotics division. They are trying to get, in particular, rid of Boston Dynamics. Well, why? There are actually two reasons. The first reason is that they don't see in the intermediate term, short and intermediate term, commercial applications of robots like Atlas and big dogs. And the second thing, maybe even more important, is thousands or even tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people have watched the videos of Atlas and of Big Dog, and they say, but we don't want these robots. They're scary. That's not the kind of robots we want. Again, a very highly emotional sort of thing. And now Google is worried about their image in the general public. They want to be a company for the people, they want to be popular. And if they are associated with robots that people don't want, it's not good for their image. And that's why I think the main reason why they want to get rid of the whole robotics business. And also recall NEC struggling for 20 years with Papero to find a proper business model. It's not simple. And robotics technology, if you include sensory motor functionality, is much more complex than mobile phone technology. So I think these unfulfilled expectations that people have, and especially also in the medical domain, support tools, I don't know what, they're a danger for the robotic market. Now, what can we do? What can we do? I think we should really try to communicate honestly, realistically in our communication to the general public. Let's not add to the robotic hype. We have to understand people's mindsets in social interaction. Social interaction is not standing there smiling, talking. Social interaction is providing service, interacting also physically at a sensory motor level. we have to deliver on our promises. We can make promises, that's a good thing, but we have to deliver. And I think that's a very important factor. Functionality beyond speech and facial expression is really necessary if we want to have real benefit from the robots. I think all these social robots, I showed you, many of them, I think they lack this kind of functionality, and that's why people get frustrated. And one of the things that we are, that's kind of my hobby, this robot, a bartender robot that only talks to the customers, but cannot provide and prepare a drink for the customers, is not going to be a very good and not very useful bartender robot, right? Just talking. I don't think that's the right thing. Now, anyhow, the robots, so this should be also kind of a... Fabio, you were actually late. I still have 5 minutes, do I?
Yes, go ahead. We have time.
Have 10 minutes?
And even 15 if you want.
Okay, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Okay. I tried to finish in 10 minutes, or maybe 15 minutes. Okay. So I think the point is that we now have to interact with robots. I mean, that's clear. Nobody would deny that. And I think we must fundamentally rethink our design. Industrial robots work well, but once we have to interact with robots, we have to rethink our designs. And it's not only this kind of sort of, let's say, body-free. If you think of it, I mean, I sort of, as you all know, I like embodiment. If you think about these social robots, they're not really embodied things. They're not embodied creatures. They're basically, I mean, if you're serious, most of them have the functionality of an iPhone. The main difference is that the iPhone you can put into your pocket, whereas these robots you cannot put into your pocket. Right? But the functionality is the one of an iPhone. And in many of these, it's questionable why they actually have the shape of a robot. But now, if we interact with the robots, I think the buzzword that I will talk about just a little bit is soft robotics. Now, there's an interesting fact. Before we have seen the factory robots, they are made of hard materials, steel, plastic, electrical motors. By contrast, human beings are built 85% of soft material, so they're largely soft. And the enormous abilities and the enormous power of the human sensory motor system is largely due to the fact that we are built of soft materials. So if you look at the robots that we have today, they're nowhere near in terms of sensory motor abilities to a human being. So if we ever want to approach that level of sensory motor capabilities, we need to understand soft materials. We need to build systems from soft materials. So very quickly, soft robotics, we also talk about the power of materials, soft to touch, soft natural movements, pleasant interaction. Now let me show a traditional robot. Okay, and then I will contrast this to a soft robot. So you could say this is also a Cartesian robot. Positioning, grasping, that's a traditional way. By contrast, the universal coffee balloon gripper, so what they did is actually they took a balloon, filled it with ground coffee, and then they added on the left, you can see a vacuum pump, and then they moved the balloon, they lower it over an object, and because the balloon with the ground coffee is soft, it will adapt to the shape of the object passively at the periphery, not centrally controlled. It's very important. And with this, and then once the has adapted to the shape of the object, the structure hardens, and with one and the same centralized control, they can pick up virtually objects at virtually any shape. Now here is a video, I think, that makes the point very well. It's always the same control. So the adaptivity of the system is entirely at the periphery. I think this, for anyone who works in robot manipulation, I think this should be a very convincing story here. Okay, now a similar story goes with human beings. When you are holding, I mean, here, for you guys it's morning, so you're thinking about coffee, but here it's 6:45 in Japan, and we are thinking about going for drinks. So if you want to hold a glass, then it's very important that we have soft materials on our hand, because then when we grasp a glass, for example, a hard object like this, then the material that we have on the fingertips and in the hand, when I grasp the glass, will adapt to the shape of the object, thereby increasing the contact surface, which adds to the stability of the grasp. Now, this is, is very easy to do, effortless. If you put thimbles are these things that you can see in the picture here, upper right, that people used to put on to protect the fingers when they were sewing. Now, if you put thimbles on all the fingers, you can try it. So I have a video here. This is the thimbles experiment. On the left, video on the left, you can see.
Very easy.
Effortless, completely effortless. You can say, well, what is he talking about? Now you put thimbles on all the fingers, and then watch on the right, the lower right panel here. It's virtually, let me play I wanted to play the video again there.
Okay, very easy.
Yeah, and now watch this again. It's virtually impossible to do. And then you are beginning to understand what the materials actually do for your behavior. And that's what we call the power of soft materials. Now, the balloon, I really like, I think the balloon, the soft coffee balloon gripper is a marvelous demonstration of the power of soft materials. It has one big flaw, and that is you always have to push against something. You have to push against the ground or against something, otherwise you can't pick it up. Now, if you have a glass with beer or a cup with coffee, you don't want to go into the coffee cup with the balloon, right? You would like to be able to grasp it from the side, which is why we actually developed this soft robotic gripper in the shape of a hand, in this case with 3 fingers. But this is now under construction. I can't show you much more about this now. But this is going to be part of the bartender robot. Okay. Now, what this means with the materials is that we have to take into account morphologies at design time. We have to take all this into account, sensory distribution, actuators. We have trade-offs. We have to understand these trade-offs. If you put something into the morphology or the materials, typically you gain a lot of efficiency, but you lose flexibility, right? So, and control, so you need less centralized control, but you're losing flexibility. Now, if you have changeable morphologies, humans have changeable morphologies. We can change material properties. For example, when we walk, when the leg swings forward, the muscle tension is lower than impact. On impact, the muscle tension is higher. So the brain dynamically changes the muscle tension, or generally speaking, the material properties of the body to cope with a particular situation. And then it's outsourcing the functionality to the morphological and material properties. Okay, now I'm almost finished, Fabio, 2 more minutes or 3 more minutes. I tried to put this on this slide. I think some of you have seen this before. On the left, now here, for example, you have a traditional industrial robot. Here, control is dominant. And there is also a clear separation between control and the hardware of the robot. And the more you get over to the other side, you have the materials that are dominant, or the self-organization that is dominant, and less centralized control. And you've seen the coffee balloon gripper. So on the left, we have informational computation, control dominant. On the right, morphology, materials dominant. We talk about morphological computation. And because we cannot control every detail at the periphery, we talk about self-organization or guided self-organization. I can talk about that some other time. But there is more trouble at the horizon in the complexity of the design space. There is a fundamental principle of behavior that holds for every intelligent system. If you take a computer is just sitting there waiting for someone to push a key or click a button. Human beings, animals, biological systems, by contrast, continuously act. So it's not input processing output. We continuously act, and all our actions have as a consequence sensory stimulation. So when I walk, the environment travels across the visual field. When I grasp a can, I generate through my physical interaction, I generate sensory stimulation in the hand, the visual system, and proprioceptively in the arm. And this is because I'm physically interacting with the environment. And this is the only way in which we can actually communicate with the environment. And these patterns of sensory stimulation are the raw material for the brain to process and to learn something about the environment. Now, this is not a new idea. This goes actually back to John Dewey, the famous American educator and psychologist, philosopher. Oops, now I did it exactly wrong. It shouldn't be 1986, it should be 1896. 1896 is correct. This is wrong. And he said so normally people think we function like there's some input through the sensors, the brain processes something, and then there is output, right? Completely wrong, totally misguided. We begin not with the sensory stimulus, but with the sensory motor coordination. In a certain sense, it is the movement which is primary, and the sensation which is secondary, the movement of the body, head, and eye muscles determining the quality of what is experienced. Right, so think of that. And then in different sensory channels, when I hold this, we induce correlations. So we can learn that by just looking at the can, I already have an expectation of what it will feel like when I actually grasp it. Okay, it's a long story, but this is very important also for motor control, these kinds of predictions. So there's an information overlap between different sensory channels. Last point that I want to make is it's not about input. It's about change that occurs as you act in the environment. And this is the sensory motor contingencies. And anyone who does not know about sensory motor contingencies has not understood intelligent systems. Sensory motor contingencies are law-like relations between movements and associated changes in sensory stimulation. And that depends on morphology. It depends on the type of the sensor. Let me just give you an example. If I stand here and I turn my head like this, the visual stimulation changes 100%. If I look here and look here, I don't see anything anymore what I saw over there. But in the acoustic modality from hearing, there is very little change when I actually turn my head like this. So it depends very much on the type, physical nature of the sensor, on where it's placed. It depends on the action, and of course it depends on the environment. On the make it on the wrong computer. Okay. Now we need all this if you want to understand intelligence, if you want to build intelligent robots. And let me just finish with this video.
in
This
the
is
future,
to add to the robotic
we
hype.
actually live with robots.
Do they have feelings?
Can robots hurt us? Will they really understand me? Will they take care of me when I'm old? Will they take our jobs away?
Can they see it? Can they smell?
Will it be scary to hang with them?
Can I see the box on
Start the future, then bring Europa. Erleben Sie die Zukunft mit einem inneren Prost, Cheers, Gamwei, Salut, Chin Chin, Santé, Nazdorowie und Kampai.
Well, anyhow, so this was done before we had the soft robotic hand, and so this will be equipped with the soft robotic hand. Now, how do we get there? We set up a production company called Living with Robots. It will have, social robot functionality, but also service robots in terms of manipulation, being able to prepare drinks, but also show. Would show first product with bartender, concepts, soft robotics, scaffolding that I didn't talk about, and see you all in Robo Lounge in 2018. Thank you very much for your attention. I need to.
I think we have many questions for Rod.
Maybe we don't have time. How can I? Disengage this one. Okay.
So, is there any question for Rod?
Oh my God.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, let's try it again.
I think there is a question. So.
I can't hear anything.
I also. So do I. No.
Okay.
That's that.
Can I ask a question, or is it somebody else's turn?
Please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes.
All right. So can I ask a question, or is somebody else asking it?
No, please go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right. So my question is, with all this robotic hype, we can see that there are plenty of expectations for sure, but progress is relatively small, well, relatively to the expectations. So my question is, what is our priority in like robotic development? Is it like material science, the energy sources, perhaps the expansion of the fields in which robotics are applied, perhaps a focus on a particular field in which robotics are like the most important and beneficial? What is the priority of robotics development, the global one?
So, I mean, the sound was incredibly bad. I could acoustically hardly hear the question, but it's about priorities. Yes. So what is the priorities in materials? Or I didn't quite, Fabio, maybe you understood the question, so maybe you could repeat the question. I mean, the sound here locally is so bad, I couldn't understand. Fabio, can you repeat the question?
Perhaps I can. How's the sound now?
Okay, well, maybe you can just state the question again. It's just we have a sound problem here.
Okay, can you hear me well? Right now.
Okay, maybe it's okay.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, I think it's okay. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so one more time. Well, yes, indeed, the question is about the priorities and what should we particularly focus on in robotics development? Like, should it be materials which robots are made? Should be energy supplies, or should be expansion of fields where robotics are applied, or perhaps focus on fields where robotics are more important than anywhere else? What is the priority?
Okay, should we focus on materials? I got that, and the rest I didn't get. Maybe Fabio, but your image is frozen. Maybe you're not present anymore. I mean, priorities. There are, of course, different ways in which you can look at priorities. One is priorities in a research context. What are the most, let's say, important research questions? And the other one is in terms of applications. You know, what are the really sort of important applications that we want to focus on? Now, if you look at the research side, again, it depends on whether we are interested more in the service robot domain, medical domain, or we are interested in the industrial domain, industrial environment. And then the research issues are actually quite different. So the two communities, and I think that's maybe a bit of a mistake, the two communities, the industrial robots community and the service robot community, are not well connected. Now, there is an interesting development that started a few years ago, and the prominent robot that basically epitomizes this development is the Baxter robot by this company Rethink Robotics of Rodney Brooks in the United States. And the idea is to have robots, instead of having robots that completely autonomously perform a task, or that the task is done by humans, the task is performed by robots cooperating with humans. And the robots in this cooperation, they typically do the tasks, the repetitive, simple tasks, and the more complicated tasks are then done by the human beings. So I think that's a trend, and there are many, I think, very important and interesting research issues in that area. And I think with that approach, we will, on the one hand, promote service robotics because of the sensory motor abilities, the manipulation abilities. And on the other, we will promote industrial robotics because now we can automate or partially automate tasks that we could not automate before. Moreover, these kinds of robots tend to be affordable, more affordable, cheaper, and can be used by small and medium enterprises, whereas before robots, because of the high investment costs, could only be used by very large companies. I'm not sure I answered your question, but I think one of the priorities, I would say, would be human-robot cooperation, definitely.
Well, that counts as an answer. Thank you very much, Rob. Great, by the way.
I didn't get that.
So, are there other questions? Or? So, if there are not, thank you, Rolf, for your, as usual, very inspiring talk.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for listening. Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, see you.
Bye.
Some technical. Okay, so thank you, everybody, and keep in touch. Bye-bye.